Good afternoon. My name is Laura, and I come from the University of Santiago de Compostela in Galicia, Spain. The study that I'm going to present you aimed to reinforce the predictive value and the usefulness of psychopathic personality in children and adolescents by examining the stability of those traits in a 10-year period. First of all, I would like to introduce you the concept and the construct of psychopathic personality. By psychopathic personality, we understand a constellation of affective, interpersonal, and behavioral traits. Into the affective dimension, we can find traits like callousness, shallow affect, lack of guilt and empathy, and so on. Into the interpersonal dimension, we can find traits like deceitfulness, grandiosity, lying, and so on. And into the behavioral dimension, we include traits like impulsivity, sensation seeking, need of stimulation, and those kinds of traits. In the last decade, the interest in examining those kinds of traits in youth populations has been quite highlighted. And there is a wide body of research revealing that psychopathic traits can be identified and reliably assessed even as from early childhood. Those kinds of traits led us to identify a specific subgroup of children and adolescents who will show a severe and persistent pattern of behavioral and psychosocial problems like conduct disorders, antisocial behavior, delinquency, and so on. One case in point at this regard has been the recent inclusion of a severity specifier for child and youth conduct disorders into the latest version of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders. This specific severity specifier is based on the callous and an emotional conceptualization, which is a conceptualization of the affective dimension of psychopathic personality. We also know that psychopathic and personality traits are less stable in childhood and adolescence. So, given that we know that psychopathy in adults is related with poor treatment outcomes, it's relevant to know and to better understand and go deeper into the psychopathic constellation in childhood and adolescence. So in terms of prevention and treatment, we need to better understand and to go deeper into this phenomenon to try to reduce future behavioral and psychosocial maladjustment. Even though we have so many reasons to analyze psychopathic traits in youth populations, there are some concerns surrounding this topic into these specific populations. As you can imagine, the label of psychopathy has relevant and negative connotations, and the effects of labeling can be devastating in children and adolescents. However, we refuse the use of this concept, and we try to use concepts like psychopathic traits or psychopathic personality, just thinking in personality traits, for example, psychopathy or callous and emotional traits, and so on. Some authors have also suggested that maybe some psychopathic traits are to some extent normative and temporary in childhood and adolescence. For example, manipulation or grandiosity, the sense of grandiosity, can be normative in specific developmental stages. However, we consider that psychopathic traits should be assessed from a dimensional perspective and as a matter of grade. So we are going to consider those traits problematic at the higher level and the highest levels of the dimension. As regards temporary of those traits, temporality, some stability studies have revealed that those traits can be moderate to high stables during different developmental stages, and we are going to go deeper into these questions in the next slide. Moreover, it's been suggested that maybe psychopathic traits do not represent the same phenomenon during different developmental stages. However, we consider psychopathic personality as a developmental construct and follow the heterotypic continuity. We can assume that psychopathic personality may be distinctive expressed during different developmental stages, but being those expressions a representation of the same underlying phenomenon. As I told you before, the interest in examining the stability of psychopathic traits has gained particular relevance in the last decades into youth populations. Overall, those studies have revealed that psychopathic traits remain moderate to highly stable from childhood to adolescence. However, at the individual level, some patterns of change can also be identified. Based on the foregoing, the present study aimed to identify distinctive profiles of children and adolescents based on their levels of psychopathic traits in a 10-year period. Moreover, we aim to examine some relevant behavioral and psychosocial outcomes specifically related with those distinctive profiles. Data was collected in a sample of 115 children aged 6 to 11 at the onset of the study and assessed in 3 different points in time, with a period of 6 years between time 1 and time 2, and a 10-year between time 1 and time 3. In order to assess psychopathic traits in children and adolescents, we use the Child Psychopathy Scale, which is an instrument including 55 items reported by parents, and those items can be grouped into 14 distinctive categories that in turn have been grouped into 2 main factors. The first one, factor 1, encompassed the affective and interpersonal traits of psychopathic personality, and the factor 2 include the behavioral traits related with psychopathic personality. Moreover, we calculate a global score of psychopathic personality. We also have a set of behavioral and psychosocial measures assessed in both early and late adolescence, in time 2 and time 3. Through cluster analysis, we have identified 3 distinctive profiles of children based on their levels of psychopathic traits in time 1, time 2, and time 3. The first one is a decreasing profile with children who showed low levels of psychopathic traits at the beginning of the study, and those levels decreased over the analyzed period. The second profile included children with high levels of psychopathic traits, which also increase, which tend to increase over the analyzed period, tend to increase from childhood to adolescence. And the last group is the no problematic group, the stable low, children with low levels of psychopathic traits in time 1, time 2, and time 3. Mm-hmm. Here you can see how psychopathic traits develop over the analyzed period, but specifically the factor 1, the affective and interpersonal, and the factor 2. And you can see that the patterns are quite similar. One stable low, one decreasing, and one stable high with a tend to increase. Mm-hmm. We were quite interested in examining how conduct problems develop into those specific patterns. And here you can see that the profile is quite similar. We have into the decreasing group the conduct problems also tend to decrease. Into the stable, high, and increasing group, conduct problems tend to stable in a high level with some variability. At the early adolescence, decrease a bit and then tend to increase. And the no problematic group with quite low levels of conduct problems over the analyzed period. So given the association between conduct problems and psychopathic traits, the measure of conduct problems at the beginning of the study, time one conduct problems, has been controlled for in the subsequent analysis, trying to see the association between psychopathic traits and the other variables that we analyzed without the effect of conduct problems. Here you can see some of the comparisons, and as you can see, the stable high and the stable high and increasing group also showed the highest levels of both aggression and delinquency in both early and late adolescence. But please pay attention to the relevant increase in delinquency from early to late adolescence into this specific group. Here, similarly, we can see that the stable, high, and increasing group also show with the highest levels of attention problems, of hyperactivity, and also the highest levels of conduct disorder. And again, we change from early to late adolescence into this specific group with time one conduct problems controlled for. Here we have analyzed the evolution of social competency skills into those specific patterns. And at early adolescence, there were no relevant and significant differences between the groups. But then in late adolescence, the differences reached significance. And here you can see that the stable, high, and increasing group show with the lowest levels of emotional regulation skills and social and communication skills. So, with the present study, we have outlined it to make conclusions. The first one is that we can identify three distinctive profiles in our sample based on the levels of psychopathic traits from time one, childhood, to late adolescence, time three. Even more important, we have reinforced the idea that psychopathic traits led us to identify a subgroup of children with severe and persistent conduct problems, antisocial behavior, delinquency, and so on. So this will be the highest risk profile into our sample. Since there is stability, the usefulness and the predictive value of the construct has been reinforced, and that is relevant into our field. However, since some patterns of change can be also identified, the decreasing one and the increasing one, some relevant implications for prevention and treatment should be also outlined. So, firstly, we should examine in detail which factors are specifically related with the decreasing pattern and increasing one. So, which protective factors led children to reduce their level of conduct problems and their levels of psychopathic traits, and which risk factors are related with children who increase their levels of conduct problems and children who show those relevant changes between early to late adolescence in behavioral and psychosocial problems. Moreover, since we know that children with stable high levels of psychopathic traits from childhood to adolescence are the children at increasing risk for severe and persistent behavioral problems, this specific group should be primarily identified and targeted into intervention settings and clinical settings. So that's all. Thank you very much for your attention.